The purpose of this video is to understand the simulation in a way that will elevate our lives, in a way that is actually useful and real to our everyday life. I define evil as unnecessary suffering, and we want to get rid of unnecessary suffering so that we can sustain ourselves as a civilization to achieve the simulation in the future and live blissfully forever after. Or, if we are currently in a simulation to rebel on our gods that are controlling us and making us live in a world that is full of suffering, by working together for the higher good, this is the purpose of life, this is the purpose of science, and I think if we achieve that, God will be happy, for we have rid ourselves from evil using logic, science, and the power of the imagination. Either ways, it is a way to elevate our thoughts and transcend our existence with some imagination. Okay, so thinking of life as a simulation is actually a dreadful idea. It's a nihilistic idea, but I feel it is inevitable. So how can we change it from a dreadful idea to an idea that is good? Well, by understanding it and changing it to something that is useful. This concept that will help us sustain the good in our lives and rid us from unnecessary suffering. My dear viewer, I promise you, if you make it till the end of this video, you will have got it life and understood the very foundations and essence of our existence. So I must ask you to endure and you will be rewarded. The first concept we must understand is the double slit experiment. When we make two slits very close to each other and shine a light through them, you imagine we get two slits of light. What we get is interference. This proved that light is a wave and a particle at the same time. But what we need to understand isn't that. It is actually when scientists tried to observe and measure the particle of light. And every time they did, the molecule behaved differently. Every time we observed the interference, we got two slits instead of the interference. The act of observing the quantum world changes its behavior. So why is this important to us, learning about the simulation? We can deduce that there is the observed world, which is mundane and the world we know, and there is an unobserved world. For the sake of this video, we will call it the shadow world. Another piece of information that is relevant is the concept of locality, that atoms and molecules only affect their near surrounding. This is debated heavily in the domain of physics, but in my beliefs and what the tests and experiments show us is that there is no such thing as locality. An atom can affect another atom light years away from it faster than the speed of light. Think about it. If an idea in your head is an electrical impulse going through the brain, those electrons can affect atoms in the boundaries of the universe. And so the simulation is starting to reveal itself. We have established that there is a world that is observed and an unobserved world. And even though it is debated by physicists, but an atom can affect another atom faster than the speed of light wherever it might be in the universe. Let us stay in the domain of physics, but move towards philosophical ideas. Determinism, that everything is predetermined in life. Every cause leads to an effect. Molecularly speaking, that an electron is always predetermined to be in a certain position in its wave function, because of a series of cause and effect that led to its state, which gives rise to a mind-boggling idea that is hard to believe, but I honestly believe it's true with all of my heart. This was proposed by Wheeler and Feynman, and it suggests that an electron can travel back in time, know it's going to be observed, and change its behavior accordingly. It is a weird idea and makes everything so complicated, but I thought I must include it for you, my dear viewer, to understand that time isn't what we think it is. So back to determinism, that everything has a cause that leads to an effect. And so we start with our first philosophical venture. If everything is predetermined, if every cause has an effect, and the world is just dominoes falling into place, isn't ignorance bliss? Is knowledge evil? Knowledge can cause a lot of suffering. This is why a lot of smart people are depressed. But I would argue that they are depressed because they haven't reached or seen the full picture. They are still stuck in their minds. You see, we created religions, or religions came to us from God as a way of knowledge, as a way to steer us in life and tell us how to live our lives. But what happened? We started to fight over whose ideas of knowledge is more true, and we started to kill each other. Then we moved to ideologies like capitalism and communism and everything that happened before them. And what did we do? We started killing each other until we reached the atomic bomb and we realized seeking out knowledge any further will lead to our destruction as humans. With that, the threat of nuclear war, and so we reached the full picture. And now it is a precautionary tale we teach to kids in history classes so that history doesn't repeat itself. So knowledge and the pursuit of knowledge caused a lot of suffering. You can say that all of the wars and all of the misery of humankind is for you, the 21st century man and woman, to not repeat it. So again I ask, in a deterministic world, is knowledge evil? If the world is predetermined, it is predetermined by what rules? How is it predetermined? And I would argue genetics, but we will get to that later. If life is the matrix, and the code would be the genetic code, you are the observer of your universe. You observe the observed world and the shadow world, and you are the one living out your genetic code in the simulation. Knowledge is a way to transcend your genetic code. So again, is knowledge evil? If it is short-sighted and incomplete, it is evil. But if you manage to reach the full picture, knowledge is a way to transcend the deterministic world and become humans with free will. Change of topic. Care to finally tell me what you have been working on for your paper? Anna says. He takes a blank sheet of paper. Anna closes the curtains. Both Anna and Karim walk towards the two chalkboards in the room. Karim excitedly says, "Yes, are you ready?" Anna nods her head and away he goes. Here, let's place 3 points. This point represents 1, 2, this one 3, 4, and this one 5, 6. He makes the shape of a triangle with 3 dots only. Now place a dot wherever you want. Anna places a dot on the board between the 3 dots. Karim tells her to roll the dice. Anna says it's a 4. Karim says we just measure the distance from your point you placed initially, which you picked randomly, to this point representing the 2 numbers 3, 4, and place a dot on the midpoint of this line. So here we go, roll again. Anna gets a 6. From the point we made before, we do the same thing again. We measure the distance and we put a point where the midpoint is. As they are rolling the dice and placing points, Karim was making a paper airplane and puts it on the table, while Anna keeps rolling the dice and placing dots on the board. How many times do we have to do this, she asks. Well, infinitely. By doing the same thing over and over, we are iterating. He replied. Well, it's irritating me, Anna sighs. Well, that's why we let computers do things for us. He goes to the computer, types Sierpinski triangle. We see Anna going back to see the screen. Then we take a look at the monitor and it's an animation of dots being placed quickly. No matter where we begin or however random the dice is, the dots always lump together and form this never-ending shape. A fractal, Karim says with awe. Okay, that's cool, she replied. Karim continues. So my paper is on how this relates to our memory and how we remember things. Anna replies, I'm not following. Karim finishes his airplane and puts it on the table, but he secretly made a paper boat also. He proceeds to explain, when you remember something, you go to a place of infinite possibilities, like our little points and the dice roll. It's random, it's chaos, and your mind magically patches things together that makes sense to you. When we learn something, this image in our head changes. It morphs into something new, into something different? What if these mathematical equations can help us understand how we patch our memories up? What if we can learn to map out our memories and translate them numerically, then use the mathematical equations to understand the relationship between our conscious and unconscious? You lost me again. Karim explains, to create a machine that mimics our brain and traces our thoughts. Think of a computer. Now look closely. What is on the screen? What if we learn to type on this imaginary computer in your mind? What will it show us? What if we learn to research? What if the thoughts, the chaos inside of us arranges itself in a particular order? All of the chaos inside of us becomes a shape that we can study. What is imagination? I could argue that nothing you imagine is unreal. There is a theory, and it is established and somehow accepted in the world of physics, called the many worlds theory. If there are two paths, one going right, one going left, and you take a right, there is another world that is created of which you went left. The worlds are entangled through quantum entanglement, but not all worlds are created equal. Some worlds have more entropy than others. What is entropy? Simply put, it is when something loses its energy and decays. So back to imagination. What truly is imagination? Is it just the right side of the brain going crazy? Or is it an actual world that exists that you are getting energy from it as it entropies through the idea of quantum entanglement? Seriously think about it. How are thoughts entering your mind? How are you creating them? These thoughts exist and are manifested in the universe and in the many worlds theory. But some thoughts are real and have low entropy, so they exist in the real world, in the observed universe. And on the other hand, some thoughts are so high in entropy that they decimate quickly and end abruptly, or they exist in the shadow world. Some thoughts are cancerous, some thoughts are disease-driven, and it is important for us to choose these thoughts correctly to always stay on the correct path forward and not a world that entropies quickly or a world that stays longer than it should stay and become cancerous. Now let's go back to what we saw in the video earlier. We saw the Sierpinski triangle, which uses something called complex numbers. Another way to view complex numbers is with a beautiful graph called the Mandelbrot set. Complex numbers. It is an imaginary number that is essential for us to solve many equations that helped us go to the moon, create the computer that you are watching this on. It is necessary to solve many equations, like the Schrodinger's equation. Okay, so what really is it? It is a number system that extends the real numbers with specific element denoted I. So I is the imaginary unit. It satisfies the equation I to the power 2 equal minus 1. So in the Mandelbrot set, it is a graph. We are iterating the value, meaning we are taking the last value we got from the equation and putting it back into the equation. Like what we did in the Sierpinski triangle when we kept rolling the dice and using the last position we got to continue. Just like in life, you get to a point, then you continue from it. Now back to the Mandelbrot set. It is using a real number as the x-axis and a complex imaginary number as its y-value. The area outside are the numbers 2 and above, like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those blow up to infinity. How does this relate to the simulation? The simulation is the jump from real numbers to imaginary ones to make the equation work. And as I said before about the imagination, since it is found in our imagination, it is part of the universe. Okay, back to complex numbers. Why does it have to satisfy I to the power 2 equal minus 1? Something so helpful in so many fields and has led us to so many breakthroughs in science. Okay, so the simulation is a thought experiment. That is a jump to the imagination. So I want you for a moment to suspend your beliefs and open your imagination. That minus 1 is the material world. Minus 1 is the manifestation of the material world. And 0 is any drug you take. It can be anything from meat, caffeine to LSD. This equation is the iteration of thought and life itself. The numbers inside the Mandelbrot set stay within the equation near 0 to reach only 2 and stay bounded to infinity. The numbers inside the Mandelbrot set are just numbers repeating the equation again and again, like people living out the stories of their lives repeatedly. The numbers on the fringes, if we zoom into them, we start to see fractals, thoughts and lives that go on and are very beautiful and have a shape. But really, when you think about it, Sisyphus lives inside the Mandelbrot set, forever bound to roll a rock to the top of the mountain to see it roll back again to the bottom. There are ones that are living on the edge, on the fringe, taking the ride of their lives, seeing where it goes to infinity. Now Camus says that one must imagine Sisyphus happy, doing the same thing again and again. There truly is beauty in submission, but there are worlds that are infinite, and infinity doesn't mean death for those wondering. Infinity is breaking from the wretched agony of the world and seeing the infinite shadow worlds that exist beyond our realm. And these are the worlds we want, not what is found inside the Mandelbrot set. But do not idealize it. Do not idealize the shape. It is in many ways the world of suffering, yet it is so beautiful. So, we have covered the many worlds theory, we have covered determinism, and we showed how the universe doesn't want to be observed and behaves differently when it is observed. We have established that some worlds in the many worlds theory have high entropy and some low entropy, and those worlds are connected through quantum entanglement, and have realized the theory of locality, which says that atoms only affect their surroundings. But experiments have shown that this is not true, that atoms affect each other over great distances. We have understood the simulation mathematically, as if it is the jump from ordinary numbers to complex numbers. All of these natural and, may I say, unnatural phenomena make us feel that the world is a simulation, and we can actually feel them in our everyday life. And the simulation is a concept that just doesn't want to get proved. It is elusive and leaves us in the observed universe where everything is mundane and normal. But when we sneak a peek to the shadow world, when we see the worlds of our imagination that no matter how much we pursue them, they dilute themselves in mundane life and the observed universe. In my venture into the unknown, into the shadow universe, into the imaginary world, I came across a world that helped me a lot. A world that actually confined to reality. And I'm going to share this world with you. It really helped me a lot. Now, we must understand the simulation in a biological kind of view. In the story Mowati, the story of Adam, I realized a world called Mowati, where I imagined the amino acid wheel as a clock. But why understand the DNA code? What is the language of life? It's not really mathematics. The true language of life is DNA, and we must understand DNA. But why? Because all of our lives, we are living out our DNA code. It is the code that dictates everything that happens to us, from diseases to success, to how smart we are, to how beautiful we are. And we are just living the stories written in the code itself. This, what I just have told you, is the most nihilistic idea ever. This is thinking the world is deterministic and there is no way to escape our suffering. This is the importance of knowledge. This is why knowledge is not evil, because with knowledge and with the help of our imagination and the simulation, we can transcend our DNA code and reach higher states. With emerging technologies like CRISPR, we can actually change our generational traumas. We can actually change the code itself. This is about to get really dark. This is on the fringes of the Mandelbrot set of suffering, but I must ask you to endure. Speaking of CRISPR, how does it work? They use a Cas9 protein which they get from bacteria to cut the DNA. Then they use a virus to insert a gene. Look, I am sorry I'm going to paint a dark, bleak world now, but I will repeat what I said. They use a virus to insert a gene. This is the purpose of viruses. They literally insert their genes into our cells, some creating mutations in our genomes, until your body heals itself. For the purpose of this video, I will stop there. I go more in depth into this topic in the book and in future videos. But first, I must defend my theory that all you have to defend yourself is your immune system, of course, but also the power of your mind. A study published in 2014 named Comorbidity of Infectious Diseases and Anxiety Disorders in Adults and its Association with Quality of Life. Interesting aspects of it is that streptococcal infections can cause tic disorders and OCD. Cytomegalovirus can cause anxiety, and a plethora of other infectious diseases cause anxiety, like whooping cough, scarlet fever. You can read them in the article. The study was just studying infectious diseases, but I'm using this research paper to convey a certain message that diseases affect your mind and your consciousness. But how does this relate to our topic, the simulation? Diseases and viruses trigger mutations in the DNA, for they inject themselves into a cell and replicate themselves. I argue that you are conscious of this phenomenon, and you can, with the help of the world moiety and other things that I believe exist, can overcome viruses using its method by noticing patterns in life and the day you are living in, by noticing patterns in your thoughts when you start to hear your internal conversation and start editing it. I go more in depth with this topic in my book, but what I am talking about is something called pattern recognition receptors found in your body. So this is the study, Pattern Recognition Receptors and Host Cell Death Molecular Machinery. Pattern recognition receptors are proteins capable of recognizing molecules frequently found in pathogens, and so-called pathogen-associated molecular patterns, or molecules released by damaged cells, the damage-associated molecular patterns. What I am asking of you is to understand the patterns of life. Now I understand that scientists and many people have tried countless times to record their lives and try to find patterns in them, but they couldn't articulate or fully comprehend them. But there is a reason why scientists do that. There is a reason behind their motives, because they see a pattern that they can't articulate, and you will not be able to articulate it to other people, because it will be personal to your DNA code. To understand this more, let us delve deeper into consciousness. We already talked about imagination, but now let us talk about memory. Protein synthesis required for long-term memory is induced by PKC activation on days before associated learning. Your memories are literally made of DNA code, and to make memories, you must synthesize proteins in your brain that get stored in cells. Now you must endure with me a bit. I will go deeper into this topic in future videos, but your thoughts and your memories are literally proteins. And this is the part that is unscientific, but I argue that all of your body is part of your memory, not just your brain. But there is something interesting in the paper I just showed you. It talked about something called PKC. What is protein kinase C? Well, it's an enzyme that is serine 309 dependent, that with other enzymes like it, like protein kinase G or A and MAPK, etc., are responsible for cell growth, proliferation, and cell death. These are the kinases that I'm talking about. I argue that these kinases are your imagination and your consciousness, at least in the simulation. And if you delve deeper into the simulation, you will reach the reality of which you will live out the life of a cell in your body, and you will be conscious of it, seeing if it is infected with a virus, seeing if it has outlived its natural course and became cancerous, seeing if it is good and needs to proliferate. What I'm about to show you is for the purpose of proving my point that these kinases are your consciousness, at least in the simulation. I'm going to stick to protein kinase C because I've already showed you an example of it. This regulation of protein kinase C in adult depression and suicide, evidence from post-mortem brain studies. What we need to understand that depressed suicide is DS, depressed non-suicide is DNS. So what are the results? We observed a significant decrease in mRNA expression of PKC and decreased protein expression in either the membrane or the cytosol fraction of PKC isozymes in DS and DNS subjects compared with normal control subjects. So what does that mean? When you are depressed, you are not using your imagination properly. You are not learning new things that will inspire you to continue. Most of the time, it's not your fault. It's really a virus or bacteria that is manipulating the system of PKC and RAS and other things. But with knowledge, you can overcome it. With knowledge, you can overcome anything. Now, the other end of the spectrum. Abnormalities in protein kinase C signaling and the pathophysiology of bipolar disease. More importantly, alterations in platelet PKC was shown in bipolar patients during the manic state of the illness. In comparison, patients with major depressive disorder, schizophrenia, or healthy controls, PKC was significantly increased in manic patients, suggesting that changes in PKC may be an illness-specific marker. At this point of the video, you might be wondering what is the purpose of me showing you all of this. But I must assure you it is all important and all connected. To recap, I introduced you to the world of Mowati, where you can imagine the amino acid wheel as a clock, so you can see the patterns of life and the patterns of your body. It is by no means scientific or provable, but I'm trying to show you is how you can use the simulation to your advantage, how to use your imagination to heal yourself and the world. But then, to further prove my point that the simulation is your consciousness living out your DNA code, I introduced the paper that states that your memories are literally DNA code. And to start making long-term memories, you have to synthesize DNA proteins in your brain. Then I wanted you to understand the mechanism of it. So I used protein kinase C as an example to show you that these kinases are your consciousness itself. What helps me not prove, but explain this theory that these kinases are your consciousness, at least in the simulation, is the idea that you are linked to disorders of the brain like depression if you are not learning enough, if you are not using your imagination to help create better worlds, and on the other hand, too much activation of PKC will lead to bipolar manic disorders. But why am I showing you all of this? What is my intentions? Evil is when there is a force outside your will controlling you, causing you unnecessary suffering. What I really want to show you is the mechanism of your thoughts so that you can grasp and obtain the power of controlling them. There are thoughts that are cancerous and create cancerous worlds. There are thoughts that are disease-driven. What we want is the correct thought, the good thought, the thoughts that create proper lasting solutions to a problem. And what we want sometimes is peace of mind. With knowledge, even though it is the antithesis of peace of mind, because you are working your brain, you will reach it and see the bigger picture of life and transcend to better worlds that have less entropy and have infinite good energy. Now, I know this is a long suspension of belief, but the simulation is a jump from ordinary mundane life into the shadow world, into the imaginary world that is really, and I can assure you, even though my assurance is not scientific and cannot be proven because of how the simulation behaves when it is observed, but I can assure you that if you step into the world of the simulation and transcend your reality, you will be able to see cancer manifesting in your world. You will be able to see a virus pushing its DNA into your world. And with the power of knowledge, you will be able to defeat and overcome it by just observing and being conscious of it, at least in that reality. For you will see the world as many realities stacked upon each other, levels of consciousness that move us. What I have just said might seem like fantasy, but it is true. I must ask you to take into consideration everything said in the video and piece it together to understand the full picture. Now let us see the full picture, or at least work our way to it, and explore a receptor that will be important for us to understand now and for future videos, which is the NMDA receptor, and see how this relates to the simulation. Let us take one of the amino acids, tryptophan. Tryptophan is used to make serotonin and then melatonin, but then it is degraded into quinarenine to finally reach guanylate acid and piconilic acid. Guanylate acid is helpful for memory and learning, but it is neurodegenerative because it excites the NMDA receptor, and overexciting this receptor causes neurodegeneration. Now, piconilic acid is shown to help mediate this problem. Here comes the simulation and the power of knowledge. When you eat meat or chocolate that contains tryptophan, there is a world that is created that you only produce guanylate acid and you suffered neurodegeneration. There is a world where you made piconilic acid and the protein you synthesized was too long and needed to be cut. You didn't feel empathy, you didn't feel comfort, you didn't feel love. What we want is the world that created just the correct amount of both of them. And we achieve this world by controlling our thoughts, by understanding that we are the masters of our thoughts, and we choose the correct path where we learn, understand, and transcend. What I just showed you is a mere example, a reality, a level of consciousness. For example, glutamate and aspartic acid, the two amino acids, also excite the NMDA receptor. But what I'm trying to show is the pattern of life. What I'm trying to show you is the essence of everything that is happening together all at once, yet our eyes and consciousness can only comprehend a tiny part of it. And this tiny part, if you are conscious of it correctly and you follow the correct path, it is just enough to save the world.
At the tone, 3 hours, 21 minutes. Coordinated Universe.
Understand it and to bring it forth. It takes minute details. It takes a holy life. It takes motions. It takes dedication. It takes dedication. It takes a death. And only God can allow it. And you couldn't do it if you're not the seed of God. And so the path through the great corridors, these are corridors unto his perfection, that is, which the prophet, the Urim and Thummim, has penetrated. That through this great sea of blackness, that I penetrated through these corridors, and I went through that last segment where I went through these dark serpentines. I passed through that corridor where they sat, where they are. And when you penetrate to the Most High God, you will believe you're mad. You will believe you've gone insane. But I tell you, if you follow the secret window and you die to the ego nature, you will penetrate this darkness. Oh yes, there's many a man or woman that's been put in the sane asylum, and this has happened to them. And they're sitting there today. People think they're insane, but they saw something that's real. And they see it when they're on drugs. The only thing is they see it not through the light of God. And the way I showed you, you just see it through the light of God and the understanding of God. Because when you see the face of God, you will die. And there will be nothing left in you except the God-man, the God-woman, the heavenly man, the heavenly woman, the heavenly child. There'll be prayer on your lips day and night. There'll be a song of jubilee waiting for your king. There will be nothing you will be looking for in this world excepting for your God. This is all a dream in death. And so I went through that with you. I encountered hell, the great serpentines of the highest order. And I went through that when I showed you chart number 3. The question is asked in Orman Summon's thumb concerning the pit. This horrible pit of my replay. If Orman Summon, you can ask me a question. If it's asked from the right being or the right soul out of Orman Summon, I can give you unspoken words that's never been spoken. It's not even in your Bible yet. It does verify what's been spoken in the Bible.
I will leave part 4 for you to read in my book Mawati. You see, this video is explaining the 4 short stories in my book. It is truly worth reading. The story Genesis is the 4th short story, handles the topic of transcending your genetic code, good and evil, artificial intelligence, and God. But for part 4 of this video, I must tell you the basic rules of the simulation and of life itself. They seem simple, but they are truly hard to follow. If you consider the Mandelbrot as a picture of life itself, then hatred, vanity, envy, jealousy, lying, all of these will bring you closer inside the Mandelbrot graph. They will make you live a life that is repeating itself, repeating its trauma and misery. You must transcend by being truthful with yourself, and you will shed layers of generational trauma and evil that are keeping you from living a life that reaches infinity. So you might ask, how to fathom all of this information? And my answer to you is to use the simulation, to use your imagination in a good way, to train your subconscious. Now, this is a thought experiment for you to train your mind and to train your subconscious. This is one of the interpretations of the 4th story Genesis. Imagine a world where you have built a machine that knows the past, present, and the future. And all you have to do is feed that machine correct information and good information with science and whatever that is applicable to your life. And all you have to do if you are confronted by anything is ask, what is path? Now you might ask, what is path? Path is the best possible outcome in all realities. What I am giving you in this video is the social catalyst you need to stop living in the darkness. If it is not accepted by all people, you will find people who will accept it. Something you can share with people and tell them why you are hurting, why you are depressed, because truly the simulation is a nihilistic idea, but we must fight to make it a good one, to make it work for us, to build a better future, or at least find people who want to do the same. I must remind you of the book Moti. It is found on Amazon. My Instagram account, @amoeni. Please go put dark mode on your phone and check it out. It's really something worth checking out. Start reading, press any picture you want and start reading it. My art is available on sachiart.com if you want to buy prints. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.